Okay, a Twitter user IRH EYPA Erhaper, I guess, asked a question earlier about how, in the scenario of the leaked mid-season cup scenario, how will LPL teams of Group A perform against their Korean counterparts? So I've done some work on prep and realized I may have gone a little too far down the rabbit hole and spent too many hours doing this. So I've sort of stopped myself, and I will stop and explain what has happened so far. I'm not at the stage where I would be 100% confident in my predictions, but I will explain how far I've gotten, how that think that matters in these matchups. Hopefully within the next 2 minutes or so. So this is the sheet I've sort of created. There are a number of assumptions I think matters. MSI is always a really weird tournament to think about, as the event does matter from pride perspective, but your team will not die off of this. You're essentially rewarded with something from Split, and this is part of that. And your rewards often aren't treated like the World Championships, like that tournament you must do well at, because this is what you're playing League of Legends for. I started to do a lot of work on the teams that are going, and there are some interesting bits there, but they do pale in comparisons to the best of one meta. A best of one meta is not observed in China or Korea, so both will have to adapt to this. Obviously, it doesn't matter so much once they're out of groups. I imagine there'll be best of 3 and maybe best of 5 finals. But the best of one meta for 10-10 is going to be really interesting. I presume it'll be played on 10-10, maybe on 10-9. I don't think there's a date for the tournament yet, or if it is, it's in the future. So it'll be 10-10. In fact, I think isn't the last weekend of May? I think I might have seen that somewhere, but I'm not going to go looking now. So the draft can be altered wildly with a little blowback. In best of ones that really matter, so getting out of groups in this tournament in best of one matters more than what you show in it. As these teams aren't really used to best of one, that might show up a little, but they are used to the round robins of Worlds. Best 8 games in draft and snowball adaptations that go unchecked. So I do have to explain this, as I'm not going to write down full thoughts on how you can end best of ones, but essentially in draft at the moment there exists lots of situations. I think the best one to try and understand is in the 3rd and 4th place match between FPX and IG. IG picks Syndra for rookie, and it's his signature champion. He absolutely loves it. He carries games with it. However, Syndra has a weakness where if Scat of the Week is not impactful in mid-game teamfights and she does not have a vulnerable target for Unleashed Power, she quickly becomes a champion that doesn't matter, that you funneled all these resources onto, that's commanded the mid lane, and now doesn't matter. In comparison, they didn't touch Syndra again for the next 2 games. They instead picked Azir, as Rookie felt he could do more things on that and can't be choked out. There is always something for Azir to do. There will always be a vulnerable Shurima shuffle. If not, you can just set up the wall and let your Aphelios do his thing. That is always something Azir can do. He cannot be removed from the game by draft. And it's part of why he's such a fantastic mid laner at the moment. So if you can do that in a best of one, there is no recourse. You have the point on the board, you move on to the next team. That team can then look at the way you've ended that best of one, not repeat it, but there are so many different ways on this patch. You can cause these things to come around, that you can just simply rotate through all of them, and if no one else is prepared, you will go 3-0 in groups, because I believe it's single round robin. That's what the Reddit post said, but it's Reddit, so I can't listen to Chinese. I think it was IG support who gave it away, who started talking about these things. So we're assuming that these things are true. My little write-up here is it's casting it. So Chinese teams are slightly advantaged. The Korean slowdown of the last few years isn't reversed, unfortunately. I think sometimes the attitude towards Dragon might cause issues internationally, as we see some teams over there, and JDD do this as well, where they will sacrifice the first 2 dragons if they don't think they matter, or even if they really do matter, and then run 4 in a row for Seoul and play a 40-minute game. If Korea tries to do that against China, and there is a certain setup that maybe with their weak side top lane falling apart, or not drafting a weak side where they need it, where teleports cannot support a sort of mid-game economy shift up there, then we're going to have serious trouble with going the distance in Dragon Soul games. As we know at the moment, Dragon Soul is completely busted, and I do not think it will make it to Worlds in its current state. Otherwise, we're going to have a very one-dimensional Worlds meta this year, because just getting Dragon Soul is so critical. So a describe here is reversible through draft mistakes. Both regions have a negative relationship with Aatrox, Olaf, and Syndra. These are champions that are vulnerable to draft rounds. Aatrox is incredibly lazy. China and Korea both pick it frequently. China has a bit of a funny relationship where it's very hot and very cold for a little while. Aatrox thrives in those team fights that have already started to solve themselves, and then he can enter as a large piece, but otherwise is nearly completely useless as a champion. Olaf, again, very one-dimensional, only really useful in my mind where Lissandra is on the board, and other characters that must do such control things and don't offer other things. We saw it in Game 1 of the Chinese finals, and it was okay in draft, but again there, it has to power farm, it has to play a Dragon Soul game, and you don't often want to pigeonhole the rest of your team into these things if they do not suit the more important pieces like Aphelios, Ornn, those sorts of things. If those things aren't ready, Olaf can't do his thing, and it's really important that that happens on this patch. Syndra was demonstrated. I think that game is pretty textbook, where Rookie gets unhappy and doesn't touch it again for the rest of the series. This can permeate through to the top end of playoffs. So even in the major regions with a whole split's worth of preparation, these errors were occurring, and they will show up on the international stage. And if they don't, then teams are not taking their preparation seriously. I'm going to carry on going on this best of one meta thing because I feel it is much more important. I'll do a quick run through the teams after. Aggro, Snowball, and Hard Tempo without answer creates questions in effectively unanswerable fashion. These are a list of tempo champions that appear on this patch and can potentially be competitive. I don't think Echo's competitive, but other people do. So I will revert to their situations. Galio Senna has been a fantastic starvation lane. I now think the best one, better than Maokai after the nerfs. All of these champions allow high role plays from players like Faker. You even saw this in EU Masters to a degree. Leaders Akali did reasonably good work at the start of the tournament. I haven't watched much of it, but these sorts of things push an envelope. We see Rek'Sai a lot in regional finals as well. There's sort of a bridge where it doesn't have to be Olaf, but it still pushes forwards for objectives in a way that other more meta junglers don't. It is almost budget Trundle, but it has a good Trundle matchup, which is quite interesting. Sylas in the top lane as well. You can prey on these things like regular Ornn first picks that then go forwards and give you advantages, and in best of one games you can't just go to the next game and move around it. You have to answer it then and there. It's not very easy to do that on this patch. And then game 2 doesn't happen. You have to think about it in future games and sets. And since it's single round robin, there isn't even like adaptation over days. It's just gone. Zoe and game defining picks continue to draw bans. So if you have players on your team who are not allowed to play Zoe by your opponents, Chovy and Knight, I believe it was banned away every game in regional finals against them. It's been a little while since I watched though. Is the biggest example. If you have players that do this, your drafts become very simplified, and people have to start either hoping you haven't practiced it because you never get it through pick and ban, or other troublesome things, and you start entering into games of chicken, and in best of one you can just say chicken and now your opponent is at a huge disadvantage. The Soraka response is a large question here. Soraka is completely broken at the moment. I think a lot of teams might be playing it in scrims. You can lane this, you can support this, you can do whatever you want with it. Sure, it isn't that late game powerhouse unless the draft lines up nicely, but lordy lord, Soraka top lane is absolutely filthy. Pocket picks like this that we know are good, but the teams haven't committed to on the competitive stage, will be really interesting. And if you can use them and use them to create these questions without answers teams haven't prepared for, you're going to have a great time in groups, and then you're going to be able to push that one game envelope in a best of 3 set. So I've started doing some character analysis for JDG versus the rest of the LCK. I'm going to talk through it instead of writing it down because I feel like I've taken far too long to do these. I sort of was starting to create a complete set of information, and it would be a full day's work. I can't quite commit to that at the moment. So JDG, to a Westerner like me, I think, oh well, just another Chinese team. They have not failed to top 3, a meaningful event they've entered in a very, very long time, since the org's inception. I feel, so this is hypercritical of me. I feel like for rosters like this to earn confidence from people who aren't intimately familiar with them, they have to win off their own steam. I didn't feel that happened in the LPL finals. I think they were handed Game 4 and Game 5 by Top Esports doing silly things at draft. Whether that's because of Top Esports or JDG just piling on forwards, I don't know. But I think Top won game 2 and 3 and then just decided to take a nap. Their drafts were pretty abominable. That Aatrox mid lane haunts me to this day. I didn't write much about LVMAO and Loken. I felt they role-played really well. I don't think they're particularly standout, but also they, like, the huge bullet times from Loken matter a lot. LVMAO very patient on his Yumi. I believe, again, so I don't have access to comms, I think LVMAO does rotations on this team, but I'm not 100% sure. What else? So Yigao, I was really impressed. He has potential in lane versus best in slots. We have to realize is this tournament mid lane is maybe the most stacked by density of any tournament. So nearly every mid that isn't a best in slot has been the best mid laner in the world at one stage. Chovy, maybe not at the moment, but was all of last year, I believe, in LCK. BDD, also fantastic mid laner. Yigao is a good mid laner, and he's like 8 out of 10, but these are the 9s and 10s, and you really have to wonder if he's going to keep up. I was pretty impressed by his showing at finals. He kept up with Knight in a meaningful way. Knight was still Knight and took advantages, but Yigao did quite well. This would be a huge hole for teams like FPX, where Doinby would not have the mechanical prowess to show up and could not play it lazily like an international tournament last year. I don't think 705 will go to this tournament. I think Peace will go instead, but I don't know how JDG use their substitutes. Zoom is suited to 10-10. If he can pick up Soraka and go to a 6 champion pool, that would be great. Ornn continues to be a powerhouse, and don't we love Zoom first picking Ornn? It's pretty much the answer. The problem is, of course, that Korea plays a lot of Jace, and I think a little bit better than when it's been picked against Zoom, so we'll have to see how that goes. Carnaby showed quite well in the finals, but Carso did outclass him in that series. I did notice some draft picks that I wouldn't have chosen, and I had to think about why you would choose them, and I think it might be that Carnaby is not comfortable on a lot of champions that he should be. We'll see if that matters. JDG, I'm very critical of in this sort of quick analysis. There is potential for them to do well, but it is potential. It is not a guarantee. It is not something they can be comfortable with. They cannot comfortably go to this tournament as a holiday and expect to go anything other than 1-2 or 0-3 after taking a game off someone else who is equally unprepared. IG versus the LCK. I'll do like an LCK roundup at the end. So IG I know more about off the top than JDG. The Shy is the best in slot top laner in the world. He could, well, he clearly is taking a lot of IG's money and saying, I am the best in the world, you can continue to pay for me. Nearly always demands a Kalista ban, which is something that I've alluded to. If you can demand bans or demand a playstyle in draft, you have that advantage, and it really matters in a best of one. Notice in Europe that even though we do best of ones like on days for our main series, you don't see like character bans, and instead everyone just tends to play the meta pool. I think this can sort of be exploited in a set where these teams aren't used to best of one, and they have to now think about all these little advantages, because going out in groups, especially if a whole region goes out in groups, will be a matter of pride, and it's whether that matters. I think it matters to China more than Korea, as even though they are the world champions, Korea have had so many years of competitive play dominance that even though they are now like fading and the Korean playstyle doesn't work as well and hasn't been adapted on successfully, they are still the Korean powerhouse, and they very much might not feel like they have something to earn except T1, who always are so disciplined in international play. Ning, still the best Lee Sin in the world, probably. I think against Pureshik, especially, he's going to absolutely show him up. Pureshik did not have a good finals performance. He looked confused and disoriented. Leyan, I don't think will come in. There is potential to use Leyan to pick up alternative jungle picks. Nidalee as well is something I should add to this overarching list. Nidalee is definitely playable in this patch. You have to be a bit of a god. It has to be a situation like, oh wow, I'm going back now. I think in 2014 SKT or 2015? They bought back Bengi at Worlds. They hadn't played Bengi for a long time. And then Bengi came in, played Nidalee, who was okay on the patch, but not T1, not the first pick jungler. And Bengi just carries games 2, 3, and 4, or 3, 4, and 5 of a set and just wins. And just sort of pulls Faker back out of the mud and from getting his hands dirty and dusts him off and just wins a series on his own. I think that sort of play can open up here. You can definitely pick these wildcard junglers. I know On Fleek has played a reasonable amount of Knockdown. There's an alternative build that works better in competitive. If you build Black Cleaver first, you're griefing still. I'm getting off topic here. Rookie, still absolutely fantastic. Looked frustrated, maybe a little undisciplined in the 3rd and 4th place set. Was not happy to be there at all, I think. So I think he'll do fine on the world stage. He is still someone who commands a lot of presence in drafts. We'll see Syndra bans, even if I don't think they're justified and can be played around. It's Rookie. There's not a lot to talk about other than he will likely show up, and it's on him to just stay neutral. He doesn't have to try super hard. He has to make sure he's not drafted around and is a liability. Puff and Baolan, Puff and Southwind. Baolan is on break. He might come as the 6th player. I don't know if he'll be used. Reheal is on super break. But Puff, again, was another role player on IG. I didn't notice anything special. I think it's part of the meta of Aphelios Misfortune and the occasional Varus. China bans Varus away a lot, though. If they don't play center lanes as well, which also appear in bot lane, I think that there's not a lot to be said about players' ability to push R on Misfortune or do Aphelios things. They are quite linear at this stage. Let's have a quick chat about the rest of Group A. So for the rest of Group A, Dragon X looked really strong at the end of the series, end of the season. Split, let's call it a split. Pioshik did not perform fantastically in the finals. I felt he was slow and a bit disoriented and didn't always play to Dragon in the way he should. His Olaf was not a fun watch. Chovy performed fantastically. Deft had an absolute pop-off performance. I don't really like the Ziggs dynamic, but China haven't played against it a ton, so there is like wiggle room there. Again, these best of ones will be what matters, and these draft advantages, which are so hard to predict and so hard to see in advance. Korea has had these strategies where sometimes Rek'Sai, definitely the Graves jungle, matters a lot, and those sorts of differences will define these early games of the tournament. Like if you see a team go unanswered, expect to see another team that have it in the bank say, well, no one's come up with the answer, we can go ahead and force this in draft if they are allowed. Genji, I think, have a reasonable chance of winning this tournament. They will be happy to face T1 in the playoffs, I think. Rascal, Clid, BDD, Ruler, and Life. Kellen will be going. They only have the one substitute these days, I think. Clid is on a pop-off season. I think he's done fantastically. Second really only to Cuz. Ruler and Life have had a pretty good season when they're allowed to play different things. I think it's been fine. Again, mostly sticking to the meta, but Korea's bot lane meta has been slightly wider, in my opinion. You see all these different things. Mages, definitely more present in Korea. I think when you can play things like, I think Deft played Victor as well. Like if they can still do mages, and they can do mages better than China, there's wiggle room there. Definitely take them out of this stale, comfortable Misfortune at Phelios, maybe Senna scenario. So I have to bring this back to some prediction that I have to stick to. With as little information as we have, I think China is slightly advantaged. I think especially in Group B, this is almost the group of death. Like, if you swap Genji and Damwon here, I would rather Group A were just not invited to the tournament. Because this is already the best four. But obviously it didn't play that way out in the split finals. So it might not play out again, and then may change in the future as the teams continue to evolve their understandings of the patch. I think in Group A, DRX is a big question mark. If Pureshik doesn't show up, they are the bottom team. But best of ones mean that we won't see some evolved, developed play that is predictable and meaningful. Instead, we might see cheese. I think DragonX can definitely play cheese. Genji, I think, shouldn't worry about getting out of this group. They will likely walk over JDG. I think IG are angry after the finish. How long has it been since they finished fourth? I'm not good at LPL previous things. LPL history, rather, outside of the really big. IG have been there ages, and I don't want to say the TSM. They are the franchise big org. So I think IG will be looking to do well. If no one else takes these advantages, JDG will stay neutral and do okay, and probably get out of the group 2-1 with a loss to whoever has adapted best to the patch. So if I have to write it down, and I will write it down and somewhat commit to it, I will change up to the last day, no doubt. I think Genji have a fantastic setup on this patch. I think IG will scream against them. Either of those two can go first, for sure. DragonX is the biggest question mark in this group, and will wildcard their way into wherever. I think the group will look like this if we play the tournament tomorrow, with my understanding of what these teams are doing and with their solo queue accounts. It is hard to predict, as obviously all of these teams are very skilled. There is no obvious takeout, apart from DragonX being a little questionable on the patch. So I hope that is useful. It's a lot of wishy-washy because we haven't seen much competitive play, don't know what players are comfortable on, but there is at least this much we can understand that won't change before the tournament. So at Haper, I hope that helps. Thank you.